Hello, Jorvin here again. Corundum and Castra and also GLEBA have been conquered, so I'm nearly arrived at my next modded destination. Welcome to... Wait, that's not right. I'm not coming here yet. Welcome to Cerys, the ice-covered moon of Fulgora, created by thesixthroc and with art by Tserup. Hi, future Jorvin here. Real fast, this planet is best experienced dropping in blind. This video will spoil pretty much all of its secrets, so if you're considering trying this one out, maybe skip to this timestamp to hear all my non-spoiler opinions. Long story short, it's really good. Still here? Alright, here we go. The first thing that I notice upon landing is that this place is tiny. Like, almost fitting on my entire monitor tiny. But I have to say, this place visually looks amazing, especially with that view of Fulgora in the background. So, this place is home to patches of methane ice, which give us just that. And we've also got these ruins of a Fulgoran cryogenic plant wreck, which seems to want a repair pack in order to fix it, I think. There are also these ruins hanging around, which gives us steel, gears, and concrete. And then I find these Fulgoran radioactive towers, which have a stick in them. And if I take them out, they do this. And they have a range of some kind. Mining these ruins up here gives me some solar panels, and also a charging rod, which has a toggle for setting its polarity, which I'm not sure what this does exactly at the moment. Also, the main thing about Cerys is because of solar wind or whatever, we can't drop anything from orbit, except for construction bots. We'll be on our own here for a while. I keep finding these radiative towers everywhere. Also, we've got a patch of nitrogen-rich minerals here, mining which triggers the technology which lets me turn them, acid, and water into iron ore and ammonia. I've got none of those things at the moment, so I don't know how useful this is going to be. We've also got a tiny patch of nuclear scrap, which triggers scrap recycling. We've now got the recycler, nuclear scrap to put in it, and the recipe for repairing the wrecked cryogenic plant. We've also unlocked plutonium, but the technology screen and the Factoriopedia are mum on how to craft it. Also, in the middle of this place, we have the enormous wrecked Fulgoran reactor, which wants concrete to repair it. Oh, look at the sunrise animation. It moves from east to west. That's incredible. Finally, I find a small fluid vent containing an absolutely absurd 4.2 billion lithium brine. And there's like a dozen of them. So, buildings here get frozen, like on Aquila. However, I figure out that I can hand recycle some of the nuclear scrap to give us solid fuel, which goes into the radiative tower, treating us to this neat animation of the tower melting the surrounding area. Now, we can safely automate with non-frozen buildings. I build an assembler to craft the repair pack for the wrecked cryo plant. But once I do, I realize it doesn't need one repair pack, but 75. At this point, I learn that the charging rods act like accumulators. However, once they're charged, switching the polarity to negative turns it blue. The answer to the repair pack problem is, as always, more production. Nothing a half-dozen recyclers won't fix. While those craft up, I go exploring a bit more, and I find a wrecked Fulgoran crusher down here, which seems to be the only one of its kind, as all the others are cryoplants. Once the last of the repair packs finish crafting, the wreck transforms into a new cryoplant that I can't mine, and I have to use the science recipes to unlock Fulgoran cryogenics, which gives me a bunch of new recipes for methane, superconductors, rocket fuel, nitrogen gas, and even a new type of fuel cell, which needs plutonium, which I still have no idea how to get. With the cryoplant though, I figure out that I can turn methane ice into light oil, crack that into petrol, turn petrol into sulfur, dilute the sulfur into acid, which then gets pumped back into the cryo plant with a new recipe to combine with nitrogen-rich minerals to turn into ammonia and iron ore. I'm still really confused about the charging rods though. They don't output any signal other than what you get on an accumulator, and their unlocking technology says that they are useful for bending the path of charged particles. Huh. Meanwhile, I managed to repair the crusher down south, and this turns out to be an asteroid crusher from space platforms, and I realize that boy am I glad that I got advanced asteroid processing from GLEBA, because you might have seen these asteroids floating around. We can't mine them, but we can shoot them down to get asteroid chunks, which we can then feed into the crusher to get free iron and copper. It's at this point that I notice that I have a few pieces of plutonium-239 with no clue on how I got it. I reckon then that the item with an unknown source must be connected to the one building with an unknown function. Plutonium must be connected with the charging rods. While I'm scratching my head about it, I notice something odd. Did you see it? I didn't at first. I'll play it again, zoomed in. Say hello to the most unique mechanic I have ever seen in a Factorio mod, the charged particle. The rods alter their trajectory. A positive rod will attract them, while a negative one repels them. They're literally magnets. If you place a row of them like this, a particle like this one will get stuck and wriggle around. Second, these things are the source of plutonium. If they touch a container or the character, there's a small chance that a piece of U-235 will be transformed instantly into plutonium. With this, I realize that I can farm plutonium by creating some sort of pattern of charging rods to redirect particles onto containers filled with uranium. Which is just... I thought Castra's reverse pollution thing was unique, but this is something else entirely. The modding community will never cease to amaze me. At this point, I'm in a Discord call with a friend, and we start going through a bunch of different patterns for how this could possibly work. We try two oppositely charged parallel lines, a positive row flanked by two negative ones, a checkerboard, a larger checkerboard with a hole in the middle, before finally I settle on this. Two parallel lines of negative rods with some positive rods in the middle, filled with a bunch of chests to increase chances that a particle would touch at least one of them. With this, I can leave the uranium to be zapped while I go do the rest of the base. It's finally time to start thinking about science. Like Fulgora, I have to sort out the trash for the scrap recycling. Nuclear scrap here gives me mostly solid fuel, but also red chips, copper wire, and also some weirder stuff like heat pipes, centrifuges, and steam turbines. These can get sorted with filtered splitters. We have no Logibots here, so I need to cook up a plate of spaghetti to move everything around. An added twist is that I have to ensure constant delivery of solid fuels to the radiative towers, lest my base freeze again. I find that the best source of steel, gears, and copper is actually to recycle the steam turbines and heat pipes that we're getting so many of. I can't help but think that we'll need these things eventually, so I set up a little condition on the inserters to keep a small buffer in the chests. I repair another Fulgoran cryogenic plant, and I set it up to be the beginning of the methane to iron loop. This recipe chain is in no way self-sustaining, because the acid recipe consumes more iron plates than I get out of it, but I'm somewhat helped out by my acid productivity recipes from Corundum. We're also getting backed up on methane gas here, with no way to use it besides flushing the tank. So, Ceresian science requires U-235, repair packs, nitric acid, and superconductors, all of which is easier than it seems at first glance. The uranium is already coming from scrap recycling, and we've been constantly making repair packs this entire time. For superconductors, we have nearly every part to make those already, as we can recycle copper plates from cables and plastic from red chips. I just have to siphon off a bit of light oil from the methane ice plant, and we've got them automated as well. Finally, nitric acid requires just ammonia and water, both of which we already have plenty of, and once I pipe that in, we finally have science. So, Ceresian science is cooked up in a Cerys lab, which can only take itself plus automation, logistics, utility, and cryogenic science from Aquilo. And all of Cerys' technologies, save one, need other science packs to research. That exception is the flare stack, which I researched real fast. It's a building which does nothing but burn off and destroy extra fluids, and the obvious place to put it is on the methane gas tank. All the other technologies want at least red science, so I find myself automating that for the first time in nearly 100 hours. Fortunately, the two ingredients are right here. Power is starting to really struggle, so the next step is to repair the giant reactor sitting in the middle of the moon. To do that, I research and then build the Fulgoran reactor scaffold, and sweet GLEBA, it's enormous! I have to thaw out the reactor by turning on this radiative tower, revealing this giant thing. After I pull out some 8,000 scrap concrete, the scaffold goes over it, and then I have to feed in a good 600 repair packs. Once that's done, we have an oversized reactor in the base. This thing only takes mixed oxide fuel cells, which we can only make with the plutonium that's been getting generated this entire time. But besides that, it generates power just like an ordinary nuclear reactor, with heat pipes, exchangers, and steam turbines. But once I do throw a cell into the reactor, it starts spitting out charged particles at high speed, and I take some actual damage. I move the particle trap for generating plutonium to just above the reactor, where I hope the charged rods will act as some kind of shield, and I set up a small combinator to control when to insert new fuel cells. The reactor burns through the fuel cells way faster than I can generate the plutonium for them, and I need to keep the turbines online at all costs lest my base shut down, so the next thing to do is research mixed oxide waste processing, which lets me dissolve the fuel cells into a liquid and then solidify that back into plutonium, but also a new variant of plutonium, 238, which we can't use yet, but we can put to great use back on Novice. Fortunately, both of these recipes can use productivity modules. That tech requires green science, so I spaghetti up a new assembly line for that right now. Right below it, I combine the fuel cell recycling with production of new cells. Once I get some Logibots here, I'll be able to automate it even further, but one thing at a time. This base is turning out to be an absolute mess, but I suppose it's my mess. We're working our way towards yellow science, so the next step there is to synthesize lubricant for the electric engines. But this recipe requires carbon, with no obvious way to get it. However, I recall that we have a few asteroid crushers lying around, and we can get a gun turret to target the planetary carbonic asteroids that are floating around, and then place the asteroid chunks into a crusher to get plenty of carbon. The other ingredient for lube is lithium, and this is when we can finally use those multi-billion fluid wells to the east. However, the pump jack freezes out here, and there's no radiative towers nearby. Fortunately though, the Fulgoran reactor puts out a seemingly unlimited amount of heat, so I pull a card out of Quillo's playbook and run a heat pipe to thaw out the area. After that, making lithium is simple, and now we have lubricant, which means we have electric engines and thus yellow science. The penultimate step is to research the applications of radioactivity, which will let us process the plutonium-238 that we'll get after recycling fuel cells into more advanced versions of personal reactors, ammo, and vehicle fluid, and also a full-size reactor. However, I can use these better on Novice. With this, I can finally research the ability to drop cargo onto Cerys. This takes a long time, so while that cooks away, I siphon off some robot frames to make a few Logibots, which I put to immediate use transporting the plutonium and fuel cells. One final science pack and we have cargo drops. This base is still an unsolvable mess of spaghetti, so with my cargo platform on the way, I decide that the best way to proceed is just to rip everything up and start again. Redesigning everything takes quite a while, so I won't show everything here, but what I eventually end up with is a very large sushi loop with recyclers handling scrap at either end, while bots handle all of the radiative tower refueling and uranium processing. I double my scrap processing, upgrade everything to green belts, and load everything with high quality productivity modules, including a pair of foundries over here, which can finally make the methane to iron loop be net positive. The final tech here, except for the ones requiring Castra and Aquilo science, is an infinite tech giving holmium plate productivity, and I managed to get that into a stable state. My final answer to carbon production is to place a bunch of turrets all around the sushi belt where they can shoot down any carbon asteroids to get picked up by the construction bots. Meanwhile, plutonium zapping gets a suite of green chests to collect uranium from the recyclers. This little bit right here is probably the most important part of the base, as the reactor and thus the entire factory will shut down if we run out of plutonium, so I set up a little alarm to tell me if levels start getting low. I'm finally getting to a state where I can start crafting a rocket. I'm already making LDS and blue chips as part of yellow science, so the only one left is rocket fuel. Crafting that here requires the Aquilo recipe of ammonia, solid fuel, and water, but once that can complete, I can start shipping the plutonium-238 back to Novice to use there. And myself as well. Farewell, Cerys. And thank you, Rock. I did have a good time. So, I'm gonna come right out and say it. Cerys is an outstandingly well-designed planet. It can come across at first as a no-bots run of Fulgora with a bit of Aquilo thrown in, but once I figured out the secret of producing plutonium, the entire place flipped in my head. Any mod can add complexity with more production chains, multiple surfaces, or looping recipes, but it's quite rare to make something utterly new. It is so refreshing to go onto a planet and be confronted with a problem whose solution requires you to think about the game in a whole new way. That is why I love GLEBA so much, and the same philosophy is true here. The end result is that Cerys feels and plays like an escape room. You're stuck here, and you have to work your way through a set of puzzles to get out. I especially like how the answers to these problems can't be solved just by looking ahead at the recipes in the tech tree. You've got to look at the planet around you and see how your buildings interact with the environment. The rewards for solving this puzzle are powerful but subtle. They provide a small but useful bump in power for until you get to Aquilo, which is even more desirable when you're playing with more planets like me, and you won't get to Aquilo until much later. Unlike Corundum or Castra, which want the foundry and the recycler, Cerys is the first planet that I'm confident that you could go here right after Novice. Sure, it'll be easier with green belts or stack inserters, but that's true of any planet. I thoroughly enjoyed Cerys. It was frustrating at first, sure, but I think that comes far more from my inability to handle scrap sushi belts than the mod. I don't really have anything bad to say, apart from it maybe not making sense lore-wise that you can drop construction bots and not anything else. I know that's purely a balancing decision, but it's still funny. And that's Cerys. I'll be heading to Fulgora next, which should be quicker now that I've gotten better with scrap processing. But after that, I'll be heading outwards to the next model planet. I hope the engineer can swim. This has been Jorvin, and thanks for watching.